This is Dr. Elif Emirahmetoğlu, who is a research fellow at the Faculty of Protestant Theology at LMU Munich. So we have two LMUs here, and Professor Emirahmetoğlu is in LMU Munich. So over to you, Elif. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miller. I would like to thank the organizers of the conference for the invitation. It's a great pleasure for me to learn from all these interesting papers. Islam and Jainism have coexisted in the same geographical area for over 1,000 years. This long coexistence displays various forms of contact, such as commercial, political, social, religious, and intellectual. There are some significant theological divergences between the two religions that may pose challenges during interreligious exchange. One key difference is the treatment of animals. Islam allows people to kill animals for food and religious sacrifice. This is very different from Jainism, where there are strict rules against harming any living beings, including even the smallest animals. These different views on animals can make it hard for the two religions to come together and to discuss their beliefs in productive ways. Therefore, in my talk today, I will focus on this aspect and explore how the interrelated nature of existence offers a point of convergence for deeper theological learning. Islam places an important status on human beings among all other creatures. According to prophetic traditions, God created Adam in God's own image, which reflects God's mercy. Qur'anic verses emphasizes that God began the creation of human being from clay, and then breathed into him of God's own ruh, which is commonly translated as spirit or divine breath, and endowed humanity with hearing, sight, and hearts. Adam is viewed as an archetype of humanity, indicating that human beings are worthy of being called the successor of God, despite some shortcomings and negative traits that accompany worldly existence. However, this designation does not imply that humans possess absolute superiority over other beings in all cases. The Quran gives a significant attention to non-human world. This is evident in the passages where the Quran speaks of how humans and animals know, worship, and glorify God. For instance, "And your Lord revealed unto the beasts, saying, Take unto yourselves of the mountains, houses, and of the trees, and of what they are building. Then eat all of manner of fruit, and follow the ways of your Lord, easy to go upon. Then comes there forth out of their bellies a drink of diverse hues, wherein is healing for men. Surely in that is a sign for a people who reflect. The seven heavens and the earth, and whosoever in them is, extol God. Nothing is that does not proclaim his praise, but you do not understand their extolling. Surely God is all clement and all forgiving. Have you not considered that all that is between the heavens and the earth glorifies God, and that the birds spread their wings in the airs to glorify God? He knows everyone's prayers and praising. God has absolute knowledge of what they do." In this framework, every entity, be it an animal, plant, or stone, has a distinct aspect that connects it to God, through which it reveals specific divine qualities. However, humans are often unaware that the natural world interacts with God. Thus, the Quran encourages people to reflect on various creatures, both animate and inanimate, and to consider how each has its own specific relationship with God. In contrast, the widespread assumption that the Quran renders humans superior to non-human creatures, some scholars, including, for instance, Sarah Talili, argue that the Quran's vision is not anthropocentric, but uncompromisingly theocentric. This means that the Quran centers on God, and human and non-human beings equally acquire value according to the degree of their submission to God, even though the Quran is addressed to humanity and revealed as an ethical guidance for them. As quoted before, several Quranic verses depict animals, the heavens, the earth, and mountains as existing in an essential and perpetual state of submission, glorification, and prostration. These traits make the non-human world God-conscious in its nature. Moreover, the Quranic narratives that describe the occurrences from the gaze of animals discenter the human perspective, ascribing to animals the ability to speak, ascribing to animals the ability to speak and to experience sensation, to possess various characters, and to exercise moral agency. They share all a living space with humans and assist them through their moral insight. This interpretation counters against the claim that the Quran subordinates animals and nature to humans. On the contrary, the Quran situates humanity within a shared spiritual landscape in which animals and even inanimate beings often exceed humans in devotion. This perspective encourages us to cultivate a deeper awareness of interrelated existence instead of seeing humans as a privileged species among others. This knowledge has two primary consequences for the human being: humility and ethical engagement with the rest of creation. The principle of assuming the character traits of God, al-takhalluq bi-akhlaq Allah, lays the foundation for human ethical conduct in Islam. Humans bear the responsibility of embodying the character traits represented by God's name in their dealings with creation. The divine names build an ethical ideal for the refinement of the human self. Nonetheless, the path of characterizing oneself by the character traits of God, as William Chittick aptly describes, does not involve a gradual growth in stature until people become demigods, rivaling God himself. Instead, it leads to a gradual diminishment of one's own ego. The process of tahalluk culminates in realizing the quality of being an abd, or a servant of God, which can be viewed as a true expression of humanity. The knowledge of servanthood enables one to establish a proper relationship with the rest of creation. Those who reach this state does not perceive superiority over other beings, rather they gain a profound awareness of the interconnectedness of all things in the universe. At this point, it's interesting to introduce a well-known 12th, 13th century Sufi, Ibn Arabi, and his perspective on the interconnected nature of existence. Drawing significant inspiration from Quranic verses, Ibn Arabi writes in a poem in his book Fusus al-Hikam as follows: "There is no creation higher than the inanimate, and after it, the plant, in certain measures and patterns, and after the plant come the possessor of senses, and all know their creator through unveiling. As for the one called Adam, he is restricted by intellect, thinking, and the necklace of faith." For Ibn Arabi, non-human beings live in a state of permanent witnessing. He prioritized a direct witnessing and tasting of divine reality, tasting of God, which is not hindered by the obstacles of intellect. All contradictions and paradoxes not fathomed by rational investigation may become clear insights during the experience of unveiling and direct witnessing. Humans, however, need first to untangle the knots imposed by their intellect to access divine reality unmediated. Consequently, in terms of intuitive knowledge of God, animals appear to be superior to humans. As Ibn Arabi experienced himself, they may even become spiritual masters for humans. Moreover, Ibn Arabi demonstrates a profound awareness that each entity in the cosmos has a unique divine dimension, and in this sense, each being contributes to a more comprehensive understanding of God. For him, each entity exists in relation to others within the interrelated framework of the cosmos. He expressed this idea as follows: every part of the cosmos contains all its parts. That is, every part is the substrate of the realities of the whole cosmos. So everything is needy rather than self-subsistent, and this is because of the interrelationality among things. The belief that individual salvation is intrinsically connected to the well-being of other beings, humans, animals, and the environment, permeates and shapes all aspects of Jain life. Despite the differences between various life forms, all of them are essentially like oneself. Therefore, all breathing, existing, living, sentient beings should not be harmed in any way. Although the permission to kill animals for food and religious practice of sacrifice in Islam fundamentally opposes the prohibitions observed in Jainism, a deeper understanding of the interrelated nature of all existence can serve as a point of convergence between the two religions. In Islam, the ways in which animals, plants, minerals, and the earth glorify God enhance human knowledge of human knowledge of the divine. Consequently, human well-being is connected to the well-being of other members and components of the cosmos, which creates a responsibility to protect their rights and well-being. This responsibility includes treating animals with kindness, compassion, and respect. While it may not be considered sufficient from today's animal rights perspective, Islam set guidelines for the use of animals. Although animals can be used for food, clothing, and work, such use must aim to minimize their suffering. For example, the Prophet Muhammad warned an owner of a camel that was clearly overburdened and underfed to fear God in his treatment of the animal. In concluding my paper, I wish to emphasize that a theological comparison of Islamic and Jain attitudes towards animals necessitates a reconsideration of the dichotomy between the Eastern religions, which are seen as more animal and eco-friendly, and the Abrahamic religions, which are seen as more human-centered and less animal-friendly. By questioning whether the Abrahamic religions are as truly anthropocentric as commonly believed, and by considering the animals of scriptural narratives as theological subjects, Kimberly Patton asserts, both as species and as individuals, animals have their own special, consecrated, differentiated, and highly charged relationship to God in the narratives, in the scriptural narratives of Abrahamic religions. As I have attempted to show in the Qur'anic worldview, both living and inanimate beings possess divine knowledge and are in a continuous state of devotion. And this is a state that humans had in their primordial existence, but have since forgotten and must rediscover during their earthly lives. On the other hand, while Jainism displays tremendous empathy toward saving animal lives, even the smallest life forms, it does not imply that human, animal, and plant existences all hold the same value. In the hierarchy of beings within Jainism, only humans are considered capable of achieving liberation. Animals and plants must progress through a cycle of rebirths before attaining a human birth to reach this possibility. However, Jainism also recognizes that animals can lead pious and moral lives, which is another area of commonality with Islam. A Jain text describes how a fish, a lion, and a snake underwent spiritual awakenings that led them to abandon their predatory habits and embrace fasting. The moral of this story is that if animals can practice austerity, humans cannot justify their own laxity. Eventually, it's important to note that Jainism regards animals and plants as possessing jiva, which is defined as formless and pure consciousness. Jivas of animals and plants relate them to humans, who in turn possess their jivas. As Paul Dundas points, Jains do not render the interconnectedness of all jivas as a unified word soul, yet jivas interpenetrate each other. And in my view, the mutual dependence of all existence in question represent a significant point of convergence for theological exchanges between Islam and Jainism. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you so much for the wonderful comparative analysis between Jainism and Islam. So we now have, well, actually we have a decent amount of time. You both stuck to the time limit, and I want to thank you for that, because it kind of brings us to the end where we will be able to have a little bit more time for discussion and to hear from you what you think about the work as it fits in this new comparative theology project of Jainism and comparative theology.